Hello, and welcome to our Interview Prep 101 session. I'm Louise Hancock, the Director of Career Innovation for the Honors College. And today we're just going to go over some basic tips when you're preparing for job interviews, internship interviews, even scholarship, grad school, all those kinds of things. There are some basic rules that you should be prepared with. All right, so here we go. All right, so there are four key areas that you need to think about when you are approaching an interview situation, right? You don't just go to an interview cold. The first step is you need to research and prepare yourself for what's going to happen in the interview. 2, you need to practice. 3, you need to execute the interview itself. And then it's not over after that. You need to follow up. And we'll go over each of those areas briefly. Okay, so step 1, research and prepare. And most of your time is going to be spent in this step. So for jobs and internships, if you've already applied, you may have already done this, right? You may have already researched the company and related companies. If you have not, you should do it now before you get into an actual room or a virtual room with an employer or otherwise. So how can you do this research? Well, I'm sure you all know how to do some basic online research. You should do that at a minimum. Try to find out what the company is all about. And then you may know of people that have experience at these companies, or maybe a friend of a friend has knows somebody that's worked at the company. Then ask for an informational interview with someone with familiarity with the company. Informational interviews are just good to do, right? You're not asking for anything except for information. Would you mind if I spent 20 minutes talking to you about this company and so forth? Think of the other people. Maybe your friends have worked there. Maybe some of your professors or other staff at the university have some familiarity with this company, right? And you can always do some basic research online. And then, of course, you should begin to prepare answers to common questions, right? There may be specific questions that you might be asked about the skills that are necessary for the job, but there are always common questions that employers ask, or some subset of them that they're going to ask you. And sometimes these questions are asked because they really want to know the answer, and sometimes it's just a way to engage you in conversation. So these are some questions that you can practice ahead of time, right? Come prepared to deal with these. So when you're prepping, make sure you read the job posting carefully. You should have already done this when you have applied, right? I always tell students your resume, your cover letter should have been tailored specifically to the job posting, and then it'll make it easier for you to understand which questions are being asked of you. But think about the skill set requirements and how you will address specific questions with your students. So you're not going to have a whole a repository of experience. Some of you might not. But otherwise, think of the experiences that you've had and how you can make them speak to the job requirements. I went to a study abroad session, and there was a student, a graduated student now, who had studied abroad, but he hadn't had an internship. And he was interviewing for a job with Amazon. And he knew that one of the requirements for the job was that you should have some experience already in the form of internships, and he didn't have that. But he spent time thinking about it, and he used his study abroad experience to fill in that gap, right? So he was sort of prepared for the question, and he gave them study abroad, and that worked. He got the job, and now he works at Facebook. So what about these other stock questions, right? Can you tell me about yourself? You're almost always going to be asked some variation of this, no matter where you are, no matter what kind of interview that you're in, right? So come up with a story about yourself that you want to tell, right? Don't stumble about it in the meeting, right? Why do you want to work for us? Why do you want this job? What do you bring to the position? And they go on and on. And the main point here is to think about your answers to these and to practice them, right? Practice talking about it, practice telling your story. Similar, if you are preparing for graduate or professional schools, scholarship interviews, this type of thing. Research the institution. You should have done this, but if you haven't done it, then do it now. Talk to people who have gone there. Lots of, and I can send you this slide deck if you want these questions, but these are, you can access these questions in other ways as well. Right? For grad schools, for example, why are you applying to our program? So you should have already done research on the grad school. What professor interests you? What program are you specifically interested in? Right? What other schools are you considering? What have you done in your undergraduate career that has prepared you for graduate school? This is where honor students have the edge, because a big deal for grad schools is that you've done research in your undergraduate career, because that's really what most grad school programs are all about. Not all. Things like MBA, for example, those are more preparing you for industry rather than preparing you for academic work in the way that some grad schools are. But those are the things you should be able to speak to. Even something like, what are your hobbies, right? How are you going to answer that? And then there are these experiential or behavioral kinds of questions, situations in which you had a conflict and how you resolved it, ethical dilemmas, your greatest accomplishment, right? Just look over the sets of questions that are recommended and think about how you're going to answer it. Otherwise, you're going to stumble in the interview itself. No matter what kind of interview that you're approaching, think of relevant personal stories that you might have in a repository of things to talk about. And be prepared if it comes up to discuss salary in terms of a job or funding in terms of a graduate school situation. Don't bring these things up yourself, right? You don't want to bring up salary cold, but if it comes up, you need to have a plan for what you're going to say. So what about the other items here, right? Consider your appearance. And when we used to, I'm going to, my next slide is going to tell you the things that we have traditionally told students. But what we've come to think about lately is these professional guidelines for what people should be wearing reflect really the values of the dominant culture, right? Expectations of what you wear have been a fairly narrow band of values, right? So here again, research the expectations in the field you're applying to. And if you violate these expectations, be intentional about it, right? If you're going to wear something or dress in a way that is unexpected for that organization, for that type of industry, then just consider the impact is what I'm going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you not to wear a blue business, to wear a blue business suit at all costs. But if you're going to do something wildly different, be intentional, plan it out, think of what the impact will be. It might be good and it might be bad. So here's what we used to say, right? And in many industries, this is still going to hold up, and many people are comfortable with this, right? Choose professional clothing that you feel comfortable in and good about, right? Professional dress can vary from field to field. Understand your field, do your research. If you're going into a really creative field, it's not going to be the same as going into a standard engineering firm or something, right? Larger companies have well-established, at least cultures of things. If you're going to work at Tyson, right? Ask somebody at Tyson what people wear and what would be expected in an interview. Usually we say overdress, right? Look more professional than you might think. And we can talk about how this translates into a virtual environment. But when in doubt, we have traditionally told people choose a tailored, conservative, simple, and neat look, right? This is not conservative politically. This is just conservative in not wild, right? Something conservative suit colors, navy blue, charcoal gray, white shirt, etc. Shoes should be comfortable, conservative. If you're going to wear spike heels, if you're a woman, consider that, right? Do that intentionally or don't do it. Dark socks for men, neutral hosiery for women if you're wearing a skirt or a dress. Clothing should be clean, neatly pressed, and fit well, right? You're trying to make, and this is the professional you. You want to tell your professional story. You want to have a professional appearance, unless you don't, but be intentional. Your hair should be clean, neat, and styled in whatever style is appropriate for you. Your nails and so forth need to be clean and groomed well. We can maybe get away with some of this a little bit different on a virtual environment. So we can talk about definitely these next two, right? Limit jewelry and accessories. Perfume and cologne right now, you can go to town if it's a virtual interview. But if you're in person, you don't want to overpower people in a certain way. Avoid chewing gum, whether virtual or in person. Don't smoke if you can help it before an interview, because you're going to have the aroma follow you into the room. Okay, so these are old slides, and I've been thinking a lot about this, right? Some of it still holds. Nonverbal behavior in an interview is really important, and this is something you should prepare for and you should practice, right? You're going to make eye contact. Make eye contact in the virtual environment or in person. Control nervous habits, right? What are you going to be doing with your body in the interview, right? Practice that. And we can practice it in a virtual environment. And you can even film yourself now, right? That's something that I should add. Go into Zoom by yourself and film yourself and watch it. Maintain an enthusiastic yet controlled posture. I'm slouching right now, right? So you're going to have to practice kind of sitting up and being the posture that you want to convey as professional. Now, here's the part that's a little bit out of date, right? Offer a firm handshake. We used to talk a lot about handshakes during introductions, right? Don't grab the person's hand really, really hard, and don't try to match their style. I don't know if we'll ever shake hands again, right? With this current pandemic, even when we're in person, will we shake hands? Hard to know, right? So, but bear it in mind, think about it as the culture comes back, right? If we're on the verge of changing cultural norms on handshaking, just pay attention to that. Okay, body language. A lot of people study this, right? That derails job applicants. Poor eye contact is number one. And you're going to have to, it is hard in a virtual environment to make eye contact because the person's Zoom box might be down there, right? So just think about this and practice speaking into the camera. And in person, make sure you make eye contact. Failing to smile, you don't want to be really miserable, right? Don't play with things. Especially don't get your phone out and start playing with it. Make sure your posture is good. Don't play with your hair, all those kinds of things. And here we go on the handshakes, right? We used to talk a lot about handshakes, but we'll have to see how that goes as we go along. So here are some things, and these would translate to a virtual environment, right? Don't be pointing. Don't be sitting like this during an interview on Zoom. Don't be so relaxed back here and so forth. Don't look down. Practice this. And thinking specifically about virtual interviews. To the best of your ability, make sure you have a strong internet connection, right? Think about where this is going to take place. Arrange a quiet location. If you are in Fayetteville, for example, and you have some issues with some of these, contact me. You can come into the Honors College. I will get you an office and you can have an interview privately, virtually in the Honors College. So be sure to reach out to me if that's the case. Check the lighting, right? So when you are, sometimes I can barely see people on Zoom because it's so dark where they are, or it can be too light. If you're right by a window and it's sort of a gruesome light, practice that. Think about the time of day. Be intentional. Set up your environment. Make sure you understand and can access the chosen platform, right? What is this on Zoom? Okay, well, Zoom I use all the time. Is it something else? Is it Skype or WebEx? Can I access it easily? Consider your clothing. We just went over a whole bunch of clothing, right? Here, it's just about what you're wearing on the top, but go ahead and wear pants. There are all kinds of bad examples of what has happened to people without them knowing because they're not wearing pants. So go ahead and wear pants. Consider your background. Well, here's another example of if you want to have a wild background, think about it and be intentional about it, right? Probably neutral is best, the blurred background, but definitely don't have last night's dirty dishes right here in the back. You want to have a tidy background. Neutral is best. Okay, step 2, practice. So really it's basic, right? All that you should have practiced. I advise you go into Zoom, practice it, record it, and so forth, right? The more you practice, the more confident you will be in the actual interview. Practice talking about yourself. Practice talking about your strengths and weaknesses. Practice saying why you're a good fit for this company and a good fit for this job. You can ask a friend to ask you test questions and give you feedback on your answers, as well as your posture and your body language. What does your friend see, right? What are you doing that is distracting to your friend? I was saying a little about mock interviews at the top of this session. There are various places on campus where you can arrange a mock interview. The Career Development Center in the Union is one, and now these would be virtual, which is fine. The Walton Career Center would organize these as well. I will do one with you for sure. So you can contact me to do that. If you are interviewing for certain things, nationally competitive awards, nationally competitive scholarships, law schools, med schools, high profile graduate schools, the Office of Nationally Competitive Awards will assist you with all of this. So there are lots of resources all over campus to help you with some of these things. So at the end of this session, I'll go ahead and give you my email, but it's lhancocks@uark.edu. And I am happy to give you a practice interview. There was a student that couldn't make this session, so she's coming tomorrow. She sent me her resume and her job posting ahead, and I'm going to ask her some questions and give her a mock interview. Okay, step 3, you've practiced, you've prepared, you're ready. It's time for the interview. If it is in person, which is almost certainly not going to be right now, check your appearance before meeting an interviewer. You don't want your lunch on your face. Greet the interviewer in a friendly, business-like manner, right? This is a professional interview. You don't want to be overly familiar, overly friendly. Use their last name until you are told to call them by their first name. Introduce yourself in a confident manner. Here we go on the shake hands. If we ever return to shaking hands, shake hands firmly. Let the employer take the lead on how this goes and make eye contact appropriately. And then wait until the employer sits or motions for you to be seated, right? Usually the employer would be at a desk, you're going to be on the other side. That person will say, please have a seat, and you'll sit down and be aware of what you're doing. Don't slouch back in the chair, be comfortable but confident and respectful. Virtual interview. A little repetition here, right? Check your appearance. And now before you get into Zoom, you can see yourself, right? Your background, your lighting, get everything ready. Greet the interviewer. This you kind of have to play it by ear, right? But greet the interview in a friendly, business-like manner, just the same, using the last name. In a Zoom interview, if you're given the opportunity, you can introduce yourself. You're probably going to be introduced, but you can engage appropriately. Make eye contact, like I've suggested, and be aware that just the same as if you're in person, be aware of what you're doing and your tone of voice, right? Think of your tone when you're doing things. But most importantly, right, be yourself, be authentic. Be sure to ask questions of the interviewer too. Right? Make sure this opportunity is right for you, right? What is this? Can you tell me a little bit more about this job in this area? What's it like to work here, right? Think of some questions that you have and make sure you have at least one question, I would say, of the interviewer, because if the interviewer says, do you have any questions you'd like to ask me? And you don't have anything, it can be kind of weird, right? So be prepared with a couple of questions you want to ask the interviewer. Okay, so you've had the interview and you've come out, you're either feeling good, you're feeling bad, but either way, you should take the opportunity to follow up, right? So after the interview, write notes immediately after leaving, right? Write down the names and the titles of the people that were there so that you can remember, right? Joe Smith was in the meeting. I'm blanking on names, right? Katie Powell was there. Write those people down, and then you can send follow-up emails, right? And what can you do in a thank you note or an email? If there's something you forgot to say or you want to elaborate on it, you can do it in this. Send your follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours. Later is better than never, right? Start with the name of the person who interviewed you. Use their first name if you're on a first name basis. If not, use their last name, right? Mr. or Mrs., Mr. If it's a woman and you don't know whether it's Mrs., use Ms. I always just use Ms. anyway. Choose an appropriate length of your email. More concise is appropriate for most things. Close the letter with your name and contact information, etc. Proofread before you hit send, right? You want to give your follow-up a final edit. This is you. This is your professional self going out there, right? Here's a little example. Dear Mrs. Such and Such, thank you for taking the time to speak to me about the marketing coordinator role, blah, 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 right? And just recap some of why you're excited about the job and what you bring to the table, right? In a very brief way. Now, there's a second type of email that you can send, which is called the staying in touch email. For example, you didn't get it, but you still want to maintain the relationship, right? So at some period of time, you might reach out and say, thank you again for interviewing me. I enjoyed my conversations with you. I enjoyed what the things that you told me. And use this opportunity to maybe keep it going, right? Would you have 20 minutes to spare, perhaps, to give me, this is more like asking for an informational interview at this point, right? You're expanding your network, you're keeping the contact going. And those of you who have LinkedIn, if you don't have LinkedIn, you can come to my LinkedIn workshop in April, right? Connect with these people on LinkedIn so you're expanding your network. And then maybe you'd get another opportunity that you might want to ask this person a question about. And that would be a good opportunity to ask them something. Okay. So with that, that's the end of my formal presentation, but I can take questions. Let me go ahead and put my email address in the chat, and I'm happy to do a one-on-one follow-up with any of you and practice some interview skills. Are there any questions at all? You can just say them or put them in the chat.
I have one question.
Yeah.
So I went to the career fair for the STEAM career fair, and I'm an international student. So how's a good way to ask, like if they accept OPTs or CPTs or sponsorship in the future for international?
Okay. So for one thing, I would ask them at the career fair for sure. You know, I think that's a fair question to ask. But are you asking me that now because you have an interview with them?
No, I asked them that in the career fair. Like that was one of the questions to everyone that I talked to.
Oh, you did? Yeah.
I asked them right off the bat, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't know if there was a better approach other than that, and just asking them, because I know I know a lot of companies only hire U.S. citizens. Others do offer OPTs, but after well, accept OPTs, not offer them, but after they end, they don't do sponsorship for any working visas. So I didn't know if there was any other better method to ask.
I don't think so. I mean, that's important information for you to know, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I would just ask it. Or yeah.
Perfect. And then you said we can email you if we want to have a
Absolutely.
one-on-one.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, just email me and we can set something up.
Awesome.
Anybody else? All right, well, you have my email address, and if a question comes up, you think of something or something you would like to practice, or just go ahead and email me. Yes, you have another
One
question.
more question. Yes.
Yeah,
Can we have access to these slides? Could you send
yeah,
them
sure.
to us?
Yeah, I'll send them to you.
Okay, perfect.
I'll do it
Is it better if I type my email in the chat box?
I have an attendee list, so I can
Okay.
just send them out to everybody on the call.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Anybody else? All right, well, with that, I will let you get back to all your studying for midterms and so forth. But if you need help with anything to do with career materials, right? If you're applying for jobs and you want me to look over your resume or anything like that, just reach out to me, all right? All right. Thank you, guys. Have a good one. Thanks to my techies. Bye.